Yo, what up, Toshi here. So I'm gonna have this on the screen. I'm not gonna show too much, but this is probably why we have not received the drip marketing for Hanabi or Sparkle. I'm not going to go ahead and say this is for sure because Hoyoverse hasn't explicitly stated or hasn't, thrown out there, officially why there was no other character reveal for today. But this definitely could be a possibility. So I'm going to just leave this on the screen here. Very, very tragic. And I do wish that the people that were in this tragedy do rest in peace. It's a very horrible thing that happened. What a rather disappointing day, not only for those of you that play Stillbreak Containment Zone just like I do on my other channel, or those of you that have been eagerly waiting for our Quantum Bronya. But that's not going to stop me from making a video today, and I originally planned to cover said character in today's video. We'll just save that for later on. Today, we'll talk about characters that are slated to rerun very, very soon, or characters in upcoming patch, because as you'll know, we have been receiving characters in the form of reruns every single patch. Let's talk about who's to come now. So it seems like all the characters that do end up being reran at least have some form of synergy with the characters in the respective patch. I don't want to say that's for certain, but we can say that there is a possibility that there is a correlation made between those two things. The first character to have her rerun or their rerun is going to be Seal, and that's because she was the first character released in Honkai Star, so it was only natural that she ended up being the first limited character to have the rerun. Now, there is some characters that have not been reran in Honkai Star, and one of those characters is going to be Jing. Now, he did release after Seal, so he was a character that should have had his rerun after Seal's, but it seems like Hoyoverse is going to take the same route they took with Genshin Impact, and that is releasing the Chinese or Space China themed characters during the Chinese New Year for Honkai Star, just like they do in Genshin Impact. But this is what I heard through the grapevine, so please do take this with a grain of salt. So that pretty much leaves us with Blade, who was a character that was released after Jing. And he's a character, unlike Jing, that hasn't received that many pseudo buffs like Jing did. So having a rerun for Blade is definitely less enticing versus having a rerun for Jing. But Blade is definitely a character that has remained relatively strong and has retained his value. Now, definitely with the release of characters like Jing Lu and Lynx, this character is definitely risen in stonks for those players that do have those characters, and you being able to use Blade in a dual DPS comp with Jing Lu is an advantage of having a character like Blade. Now, going forward, I definitely do expect this character to have a rerun in the upcoming patch, just because he is a character that does not have any affiliation with Space China, and since he's a Star-Run hunter just like Silverwolf, it would make sense that he would have his rerun banner after Silverwolf's. But that just is a rumor after all. Now, we are talking about overall synergies. Kafka is a character that definitely I can see having a rerun next patch. And the reason why I bring this up is because we are receiving Ruan Mei in the same patch. Now, Ruan Mei is a character that is going to be our first limited army, right? We know she's going to be a very strong character in her release, definitely one of the strongest characters in the game. And she definitely seems to be a character that Kafka would love to use in the same team. So it really makes sense that one of the best characters to use alongside Ruan Mei would be Kafka, and therefore having Kafka in the same patch as Ruan Mei seems very enticing for players in Hoyoverse to definitely implement that in the next patch. But just like Blade, this is all speculation, so take this with a grain of salt. Considering we just got Huo Huo, who is a character that has a lot of synergy with Kafka and dot teams in general, it isn't too far-fetched to believe we will receive a Kafka rerun very, very soon. So the thing is about Luocha is just a traveling merchant. So him having affiliation with Space China isn't as prominent as a character like Jing, but one thing you also have to take into consideration is that he definitely won't be having a rerun coming up because we just had the release of Huo Huo. So I definitely don't see Hoyoverse putting Luocha literally right after Huo Huo in a form of rerun, just because squashing two Abundance characters banners together, one character being more enticing than Luocha at this point in the current endgame for players, is not going to do Hoyoverse any favors. I mean, we've seen this happen before in Genshin Impact. Xuan is way too soon. As much as I would love for this character to have her first rerun, just so I can pick up Eidolon 1 and maybe even her Lycone, it definitely is way too soon. We have not even received the Quantum Bronya, for crying out loud. Daniel having his first rerun seems very unlikely, and that's because Kafka and Blade came before this character. Now, if they were to throw out Daniel's first rerun banner before Kafka and Blade have their first rerun, it definitely would make players even less likely to go for those two characters going forward, because Daniel is the strongest damage dealer in the game currently, and it doesn't help that his Eidolon 2 is very, very strong also. So under the assumption of Kafka having a rerun next patch, I can safely say that rolling for Kafka's best in slot Lycone, the 5-star one, patient is all you need, is a nice thing to go for if you already have the character. This is a huge boost to her DPS overall. You get more damage, you get more speed, which speed is everything in this turn-based gacha, and considering that the planar set for this character increases her damage based on the speed she has, this allows you to reach that 160 speed you need in order to deal as much damage as you can on the character. And you put a nice dot on the character, and considering that her AoE hits all enemies, you can hit all the enemies at the same time with this lightning dot. This light cone makes her a very nice character to use in solo hypercarry Kafka teams, but this light cone just overall increases her damage even if you want to use her with other characters like Gui Nai Fen. As someone who has played with Kafka's Eidolons, I can definitely test and say that Eidolon 1 is extremely strong on the character. 30% dot received by the target is extremely strong. Your dots deal so much more damage because of this. And Eidolon 2 allows your Kafka to boost the dot damage not only Kafka, but any other dot damage dealer in the party as well. Now, if we take into consideration that Black Swan may be a character that puts dots onto the enemies just like Kafka, then having this on Kafka means that your Black Swan will potentially do a lot more damage. So think of this 25% damage is 25% for Kafka and 25% for Black Swan as well. But remember, noob over dupe. So new character over duplicate character. That is always first and foremost. For Blade's Light Cone, you probably are going to roll for this whether I recommend it or not. And if you have the character and you are a fan of Blade, definitely pick up his Light Cone if you don't already have it. But I can safely say that a Secret Vow is very strong on the character. A Secret Vow gives him so much damage bonus, and considering the Light Cone gives him crit rate, HP, and damage bonus, and that's pretty much all it does, there definitely is light cones in the game that are stronger than the reachable side compared to 4-star options, right? So as much as I was looking forward to the reveal of the Quantum Bronya, this just is a slight wrench in today's plans. That's going to be the video here, so I probably will do a who you should pull for characters 1.6, under the assumption that Kafka, let's say Blade, has their rerun banner, and then we have Ron May and Dr. Ratio releasing in the same patch as well. That's 4 characters that are going to be very enticing to pull for most players, right? Kafka is a very strong AoE dot detonator. Very, very good. And she's the only character that fuels that playstyle. We have Ruan Mei, who is going to be one of the strongest characters in the game on her arrival. Definitely a very nice character if you are, for every player for crying out loud, even if you have Bronya. And Dr. Ratio being a very strong single target damage dealer of the imaginary element. That makes him even more enticing. Then we have Blade, who is a very solid sub DPS, who works very nicely alongside Jing Lu. And fast forward, Ron Mei seems to be a character that's going to work in that team as well. So for many players, it's going to be a very hard patch if those 2 characters are having their rerun banner. But who knows, maybe we'll have a Luocha banner thrown into the mix. So I probably will have another video out later today if that Quantum Bronya does end up being revealed. But that's going to be the video here. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video and have a nice rest of your day or night. Peace.